All right, I'm going to talk about Medicare supplement, or better known as Medigap policies. Now, I try to encourage everyone to use the Clarity Guide, but when you're dealing with someone going on a Medicare supplement, or new to Medicare, you're gonna go through these two options. But I'm gonna do that in this guide right here, choosing a Medigap policy. It's kind of required anytime you sell a Medicare supplement to enclose this with a packet. So it has probably, now this is a 2023, the 2024 should be out any day, but it has probably the best illustration here that I'm going to use. Also, your Medicare and U book, it's in section 5. Okay, and I like to use this page because I feel like this clarifies it as well. And it's a short section. It's always good to read this. If you get a chance, it just kind of lets you know. A couple of things that it talks about is, number one, there's a period called open enrollment, federal open enrollment. It's different from the Medicare Advantage IEP period. The IEP period is 7 months. The month of entitlement, which is usually their 65th month or 65th birth month, 3 months prior, the month of entitlement, and 3 months after. Open enrollment is the month of entitlement to Part B, as in boy, and then 5 months after. So it's a 6-month federal window. They could go on B because they age in, or they're signing up for Part B for the first time because they're leaving an employer plan. Either way, they have that window. Now, if they're under 65, they're limited because insurance companies are not bound to offer all of the 12 plans that you see here, A through N. Okay, now don't confuse these supplements with A and B, C and D of Medicare. Totally different. But if they're 65 plus, they're required federal guidelines that they have to offer all of the plans. So a lot of times an under 65-year-old may only be able to select an A, and very few companies would sell any of the higher plans here. Now keep in mind, with the F plan and the C plan, they're the two that cover the Part B deductible. That Part B deductible is the first $240 for the year of medical costs. Anyone going on Medicare as of 2020 or later cannot get that deductible covered. So they cannot buy a C or an F, but someone 80 right now that wants an F, they can purchase an F, okay? So the F's still available. It's just not to anyone that went on Medicare the year 2020 or later. So let me kind of show you how this works. And I'm gonna go through it with Mutual of Omaha and Humana. All the different plans are very similar, but the first thing I do with the member is just kind of define, the 4 parts to Medicare: A, inpatient; B, outpatient and doctors; D is drug; C is advantage. And you're going to have some people that are just real staunch anti-advantage, so they're wanting to go traditional Medicare. Now I just play on that. I'm going to use that and say, that's a good point. Medicare's been around a long time. Generally, most any doctor, hospital takes Medicare. There's no authorization rules. You don't have networks. So I'm going to use that to my advantage, okay? And explain how the supplement works. And just clarify to them that you have all these different letter acronyms, but the supplement, when we get to these 12 different plans, they're different than the A and B of Medicare and C and D. Now, some of these plans have cost share with them, like the K, the L, where it doesn't pay all of the 20% left over. So Medicare's an 80-20, where you see 100%. It's pretty much picking up all of that leftover benefit. But like, for example, and I don't really sell these too much, the K or the L, but what would happen on an L is they'd owe 5% because it'd pay 15% of that 20. So they'd owe 5%. On a K, it'd pay 50% of that 20%. So they'd owe 10%. Okay. Up to a certain max out of pocket, kind of like an Advantage plan before they didn't pay anything. You have the high deductible plans, like a high deductible G means that they would pay it all. The $240 annual Part B deductible, the $1,600 Part A deductible. They pay it all. And if they accrue out of pocket $2,700 for the year, their G kicks in and everything's 100% paid, okay? So let me show you how that breaks down. When you present, you just explain to them this is the benefit outline of coverage. And same thing here that we just went over. The insurance company kind of lays it out a little easier. So you kind of go through. But I just kind of steer towards two plans, G and N. Now, they're identical except for three things. The G covers what's called an excess charge. If a doctor does not take Medicare assignment, in other words, he doesn't want to accept what Medicare pays because Medicare's reimbursed rate's really low, he can charge an extra 15%, and the G pays that, and so does the F. But the N and these other plans typically don't. Also, the N, you're left with up to a $20 copay for office visits, $50 for emergency room visit, and you don't have that with a G. So if you ended up going quite a bit to a specialist, that could add up, okay? So they're real similar. Unless you have someone that just wants to pay a really low amount, but have the protection of a supplement in case of catastrophic, then you might sell the high G, which is usually very cheap. You can get them around $50 a month, and the member really never sees the benefit in it unless they spend over $2,700 out what's left over that their Medicare doesn't pay. So, but for time's sake, I'm going to look at the G, okay? Not the high deductible G, but the G. And you have these different rates, which you'll have an online portal, but you can kind of see female, and you have to go by the zip code. So you kind of have to figure those first three letters of a zip code and then the rates, okay? And then there's tobacco, non-tobacco. Non-tobacco always get a better rate. So keep in mind, this is a secondary. It's not the whole thing. Now, a lot of agents sell it and they say, you know, you get this plan, you don't pay anything. So people really like that and they like to hear that. But keep in mind, with this and Medicare, they have very little or no out of pocket. So it's only a secondary insurance, okay? So one nice thing with like this company, Mutual of Omaha, companies have what's called crossover. That means instead of having to show two cards, Medicare, and then the secondary card, they show just Medicare. And when Medicare gets done processing the claim, they send the rest over to Mutual of Omaha, who comes in and picks up. So even if they don't have their Mutual of Omaha card, I tell them just show your Medicare card. It's that simple. Now, very simple. I just read from left to right. Inpatient hospital or Part A. Semi-private room, just keep in mind Part A does not cover private room, only semi-private. First 60 days. Medicare pays all but $1,600. The G plan pays it, so you pay zero. After day 60, if you're still in the hospital, Medicare pays all but $400 a day copay. The G pays it, so you pay zero. After day 90, Medicare pays all but $800 a day. The G pays it, so you pay zero. There's an extra 60 lifetime reserve days, which can only be used once. Okay, beyond that, you pay 100% of the costs. Skilled nursing, unlike an Advantage plan where you can go right in from a hospital, even one night in the hospital, with Medicare, traditional Medicare, you have to first stay in 3 days, inpatient hospital, to get into one of these skilled nursings. Once you go in, first 20 days is paid 100%. Beginning day 21 to 100, Medicare pays all but $200 a day. I think it's now $203 a day. The G pays it, you pay zero. That's a real nice selling point there. First 3 pints of blood under Part A and the first 3 pints under Part B, Medicare does not pay. And the G plan does, you pay zero. Hospice care, okay, you pay zero. When you get to the Part B and outpatient services, you have, this year it's actually a $240 deductible. Now I explained to them, this is most of your care. Most of your care is going to the doctor or the doctors that treat you in the hospital or outpatient. Outpatient mean taking an ambulance, going to the ER, having physical therapy, having durable medical equipment. Outpatient administered drugs like going back and forth for chemo or radiation. All that's going to be most of your care. A colonoscopy, an outpatient procedure. Okay. Once you meet that first 240, which is going to be on you, it could take a few visits to the doctor. Then Medicare turns on and pays 80%, and you pay the extra 20%. But with the G plan, it pays it for you. It doesn't pay the first 240, but it picks up the 20%, and you pay zero. Excess charge, if the doctor doesn't take Medicare assignment, he can charge an extra 15%. The G pays all of that, you pay zero. Blood pints, again, it pays it all, you pay zero. Lab, you pay zero. Home health, you pay zero. G pays it all. Durable medical, wheelchairs, walkers, that 20% that you would pay, the G pays it, so you pay zero, okay? So very good plan. I usually push the G. Foreign travel, only the first 60 days outside the U.S. Just remember, Medicare does not work on a cruise ship if they're outside of U.S. territory or outside the U.S. So you've got a supplement, and you meet the first $250 deductible, and it pays 80% up to $50,000 only during the first 60 days. I usually encourage like a travel policy, okay? And lastly, if they just balk at the price on the G, which I really press, then I go transition to the end. Same thing. Thing works the same, except you would pay the excess charge. I'm not too concerned about that. Many doctors tend to take Medicare assignment. So you may have up to a $20 copay for office visits after the $240 deductible and $50 for ER. And that's really about the only difference. And when the price is $30, $40 difference a month, a lot of people like the end. And they're still not out of pocket in the hospital. So I say, look, take a snapshot of the G page under Part A and the N page under Part A, and they're identical. There's no difference. You pay zero on all these services, hospital, copays after day 60, skilled nursing. So they really get the buy-in there. The only difference is when you get over here. So I'm going to stop right there.